They told you women were sacred, that their hearts carried warmth and healing, that they were deeper, softer, purer, the answer to your chaos, the balm for your ache. And you believed it. Because everyone did. Because from the time you were a boy, the story was always the same. She was the prize, the angel, the mother, the muse. And you? You were the one chasing, protecting, sacrificing, offering your time, your identity, your heart, just to be close. But what if that idea, the one you were fed your entire life, wasn't just wrong, but designed to keep you blind? What if she's not an angel, not your missing piece? What if the woman you love is not a cure, but a mirror of your misunderstanding, a reflection of your illusions? Aristotle didn't romanticize it. He didn't write poems about divine femininity. He looked at nature, directly. No filter, no fantasy, no sentiment. And what he saw shattered the fairy tale. He said it plainly, not out of bitterness, but as a cold observation of biology. The female is, as it were, a mutilated male. Not a moral judgment, a structural one. He believed nature doesn't lie. And if that's true, then everything you were taught about love, about partnership, about women, might not just be false, it might be a setup. But let's pause here. This isn't about anatomy anymore. This is about how that idea unravels everything you believe about connection. Because what if love, in its raw form, isn't mutual? What if it's a hierarchy, wrapped in romance? What if when you say, "I love her," what you really mean is, "I see in her the version of myself I want to become"? You don't love her. You love the feeling she gives you. The validation. The approval. The illusion of wholeness. You think she's nurturing, but maybe she's just reflecting what you crave. Not because she's manipulative, though sometimes she might be, but because it's how she survives. You think she's soft? Look again. That softness is performance. Not fake. Not necessarily malicious. But performance nonetheless. Because in a world where she's not the default, not the center, not the builder of the system, she had to become something else, adaptive, strategic, emotionally fluid, a shapeshifter. Not because she's weak, but because she's tuned in. And when you're not in power, you survive by becoming exactly what power wants. And that's where her power comes from. Not in domination. In reflection. She doesn't overpower you. She simply becomes essential to you. And here's the hard part. You gave her that power. Willingly. Not because she asked, but because you were starving for meaning. And she seemed to offer it. You called it love. But really, it was dependency. And her love? It wasn't care. It was calibration. A fine-tuning of behavior. A dance she learned long before she met you. Not to hurt you, but to survive you. So now ask yourself, when you look at her, what are you really seeing? Is it her? Or is it your own reflection, dressed up in your needs? You wanted a woman. But what you really wanted was the idea of a woman. And she saw that. That's the part you missed. She doesn't have to control you. All she has to do is reflect the version of her you're already hoping to see. That's the hook. That's how she becomes your addiction. You don't fall for her. You fall for your own fantasy. And once you fall, you give. You surrender. You offer your strength. Not because she demanded it, but because you thought doing so would win her approval. And that's when it begins, the slow erosion of your selfhood. You think you're being generous. You think you're sacrificing. But what you're actually doing is bargaining, trading your masculinity for closeness, hoping she'll whisper, "You're enough." But what if she never intended to say that? What if she doesn't even see you, only the version of you she can influence? Here's a truth no one wants to say out loud. She's not always looking for connection. She's often looking for advantage. Not because she's cruel, but because she's wired to adapt. And adaptation in a man's world requires leverage. You speak in emotion. She listens in opportunity. You share your past like it's sacred. She listens for weakness, for rhythm, for entry points. Not to destroy you, but to position herself. Because when someone doesn't have overt power, they master subtle power. You call her emotional, but she's surgical. You think she's soft, but she's scanning. Every smile, every silence, every tone in your voice, it's information. It's data. It's leverage. You thought she needed protecting. She didn't. She needed access. You thought she was waiting for you. She wasn't. She was studying you, learning exactly what part of yourself you trade in exchange for the illusion of being loved. And when she finds that part, when she sees the wound, she doesn't attack it. She studies it. She memorizes it. And she learns to work around you, not toward you. Because control doesn't always come from pressure. Sometimes it comes from presence. She becomes what you need, until you need her so much you don't know who you are without her. That's not love. That's influence. And you call it chemistry. But it's not. It's strategy so refined you mistake it for fate. You thought she was fragile. She's a tactician. You thought she needed you. She needed your attention, your energy, your willingness to bleed for a dream she was crafting in real time. And when your usefulness fades, when she no longer benefits from your presence, she doesn't fight. She doesn't plead. She just shifts. Quietly. Smoothly. As if she was never really there. Because maybe she wasn't. Maybe the person you loved was a performance. A reflection built from your need to be needed. And now that the performance is over, you're left not grieving her, but grieving the version of you that only existed through her eyes. And that's the pain. That's the crack in the illusion. Because it wasn't love that left. It was your identity, tied so deeply to her approval, that when she stopped looking, you disappeared too. You thought she changed. That she grew cold. But maybe she didn't change. Maybe she just stopped pretending. Maybe she stopped feeding the version of herself that kept you emotionally obedient. And now, here you are, confused, exhausted, trying to piece together how something that felt so right suddenly became so hollow. You say you miss her. But what you're really missing is the reflection of yourself you saw in her gaze. That version of you, the one she curated, reinforced, fed with approval, that man felt real to you. But he wasn't. He was a character you performed in the script she handed you. And now the script is gone. And you're staring at a blank page, terrified, because for the first time, you have no role to play. No pedestal to kneel before. No illusion to hide in. And this is where it hits you. You didn't lose love. You lost identity. You built your worth on her attention, your purpose on her presence. And now you're crumbling. Not because she left, but because your emotional scaffolding went with her. This isn't about blaming women. This is about clarity. Aristotle didn't say women were evil. He wasn't launching an attack. He was observing nature, raw, unfiltered, unsentimental. He saw that the feminine wasn't created to lead by force, but to influence through form. Not to dominate through strength, but to survive through adjustment. And that survival shaped everything, from behavior to emotion to desire. But that's not a flaw. That's a design. A different kind of intelligence. A different kind of power. The kind you never noticed because it wasn't loud. It was soft, subtle, seamless. You were too focused on her beauty to see the architecture behind it. Too drawn to her warmth to notice how calculated it could be. Not in a malicious way, but in an adaptive one. Because when you live in a world where you're not protected by structure, you learn how to manipulate the spaces between it. So while men built systems, women built survival. And survival, for her, required emotional precision. Not brute force. Not domination. Precision. Detail. Subtext. You thought her tears were vulnerability. They were cues. You thought her silence meant confusion. It meant calculation. You thought her nurturing was unconditional. But it was strategic, not to deceive you, but to secure herself. To build safety in a world where safety was never guaranteed. That's not manipulation. That's instinct. She doesn't want to conquer you. She wants to matter to you. She wants to live in your decisions, your cravings, your self-doubt. Not by demanding your obedience, but by becoming the voice in your head you mistake for your own. That's not love. That's choreography. And you've been dancing her steps without realizing she's been leading the whole time. Every moment that felt like chemistry? Every time you thought, how does she know me so well? It wasn't magic. It was pattern recognition. It was intelligence camouflaged as affection. Because when you shared your soul, she was listening not just to connect, but to collect. Every detail you offered was a door. Every confession a map. Not to destroy you, but to secure her place inside you. Not to own you, but to never be left behind. She doesn't need to overpower you. She only needs to become necessary. And once she's necessary, once you build your emotional stability around her presence, she doesn't need to fight. You'll do it for her. You'll censor yourself, soften yourself, shape yourself to keep her pleased. And you'll call it love. But it's not love. It's submission. It's worship in disguise. And still, you don't see it. Because she doesn't demand your obedience. She earns it. With softness. With mystery. With tenderness that makes you feel seen, until you realize later, much later, that what she saw wasn't you. It was the leverage. But don't hate her for that. Respect it. Because she didn't create this game. She inherited it. And she mastered it. You were taught to win by conquest. She was taught to win by adaptation. You conquered through strength. She conquered through psychology. You built empires. She built access. And she built it inside your mind, not through violence, but through validation. Through attention. Through every moment you whispered, "She gets me," without realizing she was just reflecting the version of yourself you were begging to believe in. She didn't change you. You handed yourself over. Piece by piece. Every time she praised you. Every time she nurtured your pain. Every time she mirrored your ambition. And now that she's gone, you feel hollow. But you're not broken. You're exposed. The truth is, you were never whole. You were stitched together by her approval. Kept upright by the illusion that her love made you matter. And now that illusion is gone, you're not grieving her. You're grieving the man you thought you were when she looked at you like you mattered. That man was never real. He was a projection. And she was the mirror. And now the mirror is gone. And you're left with yourself. And it's terrifying. Because the silence is louder than any heartbreak. The emptiness isn't from her absence. It's from the absence of a self that can stand alone. But this is where the turning point comes. Because when you're stripped of illusion, when the pedestal breaks and the mask falls, you get your first real choice. You can chase another mirror, another performance, another reflection. Or you can begin building something real. Not love. Not fantasy. Self. Because until you know who you are without her, you'll never know who you are with her. Until you can stand without being seen, you'll never be ready to truly be seen. She was never your solution. She was your symptom. A response to the part of you that was too afraid to face yourself. And now you have to. So now you're here. The illusion has collapsed. The mask has slipped. The pedestal is cracked. And for the first time, you're not asking, "How do I get her back?" You're asking, Who am I without her? And maybe the answer is silence. Not despair. Not rage. Just silence. The kind that follows a storm. The kind that doesn't lie. The kind that tells you clearly you've been performing your entire life. You were cast as the hero in a story you didn't write. Taught to chase, to provide, to protect, not just her body, but her feelings, her chaos, her self-worth. But what if she never asked for a hero? What if she was never the princess? What if she was just playing a role because that's what survival required? She didn't betray you. She reflected you. She became what your fantasy demanded, a redeemer, a romantic, a reward. And now that you're stripped of that fantasy, you're not mourning her. You're mourning your dependency. Because the truth is, you didn't love her. You loved the feeling of being chosen by her. You loved being seen, being needed, being central. You loved the idea that someone could make you whole. That you could finally stop bleeding if she just stayed. But wholeness doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. And now you're realizing that you made her your meaning. You made her your identity. You made her your mirror, and now that mirror is gone. And what's left? Silence. That silence is the start of your real story. Because now, finally, you're not being guided by craving. You're being guided by truth. And the truth is this: you used her. Just like she used you. You used her to avoid the work. The inner excavation. The brutal rebuilding of a man who doesn't rely on applause to feel valuable. She didn't steal your power. You gave it away. Wrapped it in kindness, sacrifice, romantic gestures, all in hopes she'd make you feel enough. But no one can give you that. Not without it costing you yourself. And now, you face the consequence of that trade. You realize what you really wanted wasn't partnership. It was permission. Permission to matter. Permission to feel needed. Permission to bypass the lonely process of becoming whole on your own. But she never signed up to be your redeemer. She just played the part you needed her to play. And when that part no longer served her, she stepped off stage. And that's not betrayal. That's nature. Aristotle didn't say women are evil. He said they're different. Designed differently. Not defective, not divine, adaptive. Created not to conquer directly, but to shift, to mirror, to survive. While you were chasing glory, she was watching the room. While you were making moves, she was mapping psychology. Not because she's cruel, but because that's her niche. Not force, but form. Not aggression, but adaptation. And when you don't see that, when you romanticize her into goddess or martyr, you become her victim. You stop seeing her clearly. And she stops needing to earn your love, because your illusion already gave it to her. But this is your turning point. The power isn't in blaming her. It's in reclaiming your reflection. When you stop seeing women as solutions, you start seeing yourself as one. When you stop chasing softness, you begin embodying strength. When you stop orbiting her gaze, you reclaim your own center. And here's the irony. When that happens, she feels it. She feels the shift. She tests it. She tries to pull you back into the old rhythm. Because that rhythm gave her comfort. It gave her influence. But if you hold steady, if you resist the urge to perform, to appease, to shrink, something else begins. Something honest. Something raw. Not romance. Not obsession. Truth. And she may not like it. She may walk. She may try to reframe you into the man who once begged, once folded, once gave too much. But if you stay grounded, if you remain whole, you no longer need her to be anything but real. Not pure. Not soft. Just real. And in that space, where illusion dies, something rare becomes possible. Connection without control. Love without leverage. intimacy without dependency. But only if you're willing to let the myth burn. So let it burn. Let go of the story that she'll complete you. Let go of the fantasy that her love will fix you. Let go of the need to be chosen to feel whole. Stand alone, unapologetic, unfiltered, and meet her, not as a hero or a victim, but as a mirror of nature's difference. Not superior, not inferior, just different. And when you stop needing her to be your meaning, when you no longer worship her reflection of you, you can finally meet her, not to complete each other, but to coexist. Not to rescue or redeem, but to witness. And that's real intimacy. Not fantasy. Not fate. Just two sovereign people, no longer performing, no longer orbiting each other's illusions, finally able to speak, to see, to stay, or to walk away. But either way, you're no longer lost. Because now, you're a man no longer defined by who sees you, but by how you see yourself. And that's the truth no one told you. That the pedestal wasn't love. It was a stage. That your heartbreak isn't about her absence, it's about the death of your delusion. So let it die. And if this opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Like the video. Subscribe if you're ready to see through the noise and step into truth. This space is for men ready to stop performing and start awakening. And if you want to support this work, the link's in the description. Every contribution keeps this message alive. Let the myths burn. Build what's real. And remember, the love you're looking for starts with the man in the mirror, not the woman in your memory.